Welcome in, folks. We've got the grumpy bearded man, and subbing in for the role of Barbado Joe this week, we have my friend Adam from over at Honyocker Beard Company. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, gentlemen. Glad to be on with you, man. I know I'm not as good looking as Joe, but we're here nonetheless.
Well, we appreciate it. I think you're the first one to actually come back to do two different recording sessions with us. You were on with us back when we first started, I think.
Yeah, that either means that I'm decent on these shows or I have not enough to do and I just have the time. So I'll let you guys decide.
Well, I always love seeing you on screen and hearing your take on things. You kind of know nonsense in the same, same era that we're in. So I think we got pretty similar backgrounds in a way and some of the same experiences. Andy, my friend, how are you today?
Doing great, man. It's a beautiful spring day. Sun is out. The wind is in the beard whenever I'm outside, obviously. And yeah, we're doing great. We're doing great.
Nice. Adam, have you taken the top off of whatever you were talking about earlier for summertime?
No, man, I haven't yet because over here in worst state, Illinois, the weather is rain 3 days, then be 60 for a day, then be 42 on the next day, and then snow following that. So you have to really wait almost until you're in hardcore summer to be able to start stripping down the Jeep. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, here in North Carolina, we're kind of halfway in between what you and Andy are seeing. So for us, it's like cold and windy one day, and then it'll warm up for 2 days, and then you have a big line of thunderstorms come in, and it kind of repeats itself every 5 days. But anyway, allergy season has just hit us.
For sure.
I feel like I need to disqualify myself whenever people talk about cold weather, because here, cold weather is like, man, it's in the 50s outside. Holy crap. And honest to God, yeah. Where I live, which is about 20 minutes north of the Florida border, we get snow maybe once, twice a decade. Mm-hmm. When I mean snow, okay, you guys call that flurries, okay? We get flurries about once or twice a decade. Actually sticking is like maybe once every 15, 20 years it'll stick. So,
now, the big question there, Andy, is when you do get the flurries, do people freak out driving like it's 8 inches of snow?
Everything shuts down.
But by the same token, when the weather, we get these weather alerts, there's a severe thunderstorm warning. It's like, because it's Georgia. The sun rose. Hey, we got a thunderstorm. We will have thunderstorms starting anytime in the spring all the way through the summer. It's just, now some of them are more violent than others, but even the violent ones aren't really, as long as you're not standing out on a golf course, holding a golf club, you're probably going to be fine. If you're doing that, Darwin's rule comes into play there.
Well, there's nothing better than a bunch of old men talking about the weather. And
yeah, that's perfect. If only we had newspapers with us, we could really, do it.
That would be funny. I'll mention one more thing about the weather and we'll move on. I don't know if I'm just old now or I didn't pay any attention before. To me now, it's so much more windy than it seemed to be like 10 years ago. It's like, where did this wind come from? Like every day is windy. It's never been like that here in North Carolina.
Exactly. I've been saying that to Emily, my wife, constantly for probably the last year or two. It seems like it's like constant 20 mile an hour wind with 40 mile an hour gusts. And I'm like, we never used to have that. It may have been cold and rainy or have storms, but just like it'll be 50, but yet 30 mile an hour winds. And it's like you want to go outside, but yet if you do, it's just pointless because the wind's so strong. So I agree, man. It's definitely different, at least here as well, than it used to be.
It cancels out all the goodness when you have the wind. It messes up a nice sunny day. Anyway, I tell you what, let's roll back the clock. We're going to do a little nostalgia today, going back and reliving our past. And we have some different topics to go over. So I wanted to do a little nostalgia here, going back and talking about some things from our youth. Adam, what's the first job you ever remember having, or some of the first jobs when you were young? Anything, any recollection about those? Do you have summertime jobs when you were in school?
Actually, man, I think the first job I had was working at a bowling alley, cleaning people's. Well, that's back when you could still smoke inside and everything. So I was. I'd sit in the back of the bowling alley in case there was a machine malfunction or a ball got stuck and all that stuff. And then, like every half hour over the intercom, they'd be like, Adam, to the front. Then I'd have to come up and empty ashtrays and pick up empty beer bottles. And, you touch a guy's beer and you got to make sure, because they'd always get real upset with me if they had like the backwash amount back down still in the bottom of the bottle. They were like, hey, leave that there. I'm not done with it yet. But so bowling alley was like the first job. Then I went and worked at like a place over here called Farm and Fleet. It's like a tractor supply or something, farm stuff, hardware stuff. Those were my two earliest jobs that I did while in school. But
You remember how much you got paid an hour or anything?
Man, I can't. I think it was like near $6, maybe $5.75, something like that. I think something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to make myself sound really, really old, but my first job was I'm from a very rural county, and I think I was 13 years old just for the summertime. It was my very first ever job. Didn't have a working permit or anything, because you had to be like 14 and a half to get a working permit. But I sold produce at the farmer's market for a family friend who she had lived on a farm and raised crops and stuff. So I sat there at the farmer's market all day for 7 hours a day. I made $1 an hour. So I made $7 a day. I never had money before, so I had no idea what to do with all that money that I had for the very first time.
That was against the minimum wage law there. My first job, I did something. Somebody gave me money for it that wasn't related to me. I mowed yards. Growing up in the Midwest, that was just about the only job that you could get until, I want to say that you had to, like Brian was talking about the work permit. I think you had to be 15 or 16 to get a work permit. So if you were younger than that, the only job you could get would be mowing yards, that sort of thing. And so I had 2 or 3 yards that I mowed, and I got $5 a yard. My first job. Well, I worked somewhere. I worked at a Dairy Queen.
Right on, man.
Younger folks, back when Dairy Queen used to have they used to do food and ice cream. In the Midwest. In the Midwest, when I was growing up, they were always just ice cream, and they were only open for so many months a year. But when we moved back down south, I think I was making $3.15 an hour to start with. So I think that's what it was. It may have been 2 something, but I think it was $3.15.
Yeah, well, you didn't know any better. I mean, it was just, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's what minimum wage was. And in fact, in Georgia, they've never bothered to raise the minimum wage above 5 1/4. So they just the federal minimum wage obviously went up. Georgia never raised it. So the state minimum wage is still 5 1/4 in Georgia.
No kidding, man.
Hold on a second, guys. We got a special guest here we're going to bring on. If I can get him on here. There he is. So sorry, Joe. I don't know what was going on. So sorry. I don't know why you couldn't see the link. No.
It's something. Instagram on my end, I couldn't send any messages or receive any messages.
Okay, I was having that trouble too. It must be Instagram was down for a minute.
Yeah.
So you're just in time. We're talking about our very first job, some of our very first jobs when we were kids, and like how much we made and what we were doing and that kind of stuff. Adam had a good one. He was about cleaning out cigarettes from like beer cans in the bowling alley. It was pretty cool.
Hey, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, buddy. Great to see you, pal.
Good to see you.
I made $1 an hour selling produce when I was 13.
Like, stand?
Yeah, it was a little farmer's market. I worked for family. It was like a family friend who was into farming and raised produce and stuff. So she paid me $1 an hour to sit there
Well, I
and
don't
sell
know.
produce
I
all
don't know
day.
I don't know how much of a friend that is, to be honest with you, Brian. If she's paying you $1.
I never made any money in my life. I was 13. I didn't know any better.
Yeah, at that age, man, you're just like $1's a dollar. Give
That's
it to
right.
me.
I'd never had any money in my life, so I didn't have an allowance or anything like that.
Brian, my audio's really low. I'm going to come back into my computer.
All right, try it.
So I think a good follow-up question would be, what did you spend your money on? And then what was the other thing? Let's see, what did you spend your money on? And if you could go back, what would you have spent your money on different?
Nice.
Or no, and hey, and even another follow-up question would be the whole cigarette thing that Adam brought up, because way back when, 13 years old, you could buy a pack of cigarettes without a permission nut. So it was kind of like, okay, well, when did you smoke your first cigarette? Interestingly enough, the amount of people in the United States that smoke cigarettes on a regular basis went down during COVID. A lot of people thought it would go up, but we're down to like 14% of the population smoke cigarettes.
Really?
Yeah, well, they've about priced themselves out, right? They're so expensive.
I can't. I mean, that's a low percentage. I would have never guessed that low, because everywhere you turn, somebody's burning one.
There he is.
All right. Are we live?
Oh, we're recording. You know how I work it, so
okay.
we always go back and figure stuff out.
Nice. That's much better, though.
So, what was your first job, Joe?
I was a delivery driver for about 3 weeks for a chain pizza place called Godfather's.
I remember Godfather's back
Yeah,
then.
we still have it here.
Yeah, that's what my first gig was.
So what happened to end the 3 week period there? Something had to happen for you to say 3 weeks. You know, this is not my gig.
I think it was. It might have been an issue of permit versus license. I don't remember. But, back in those days, you could drive at 16, whereas most states now it's 18. So it might have been one of those things. I might have been just a little too young, or I can't remember exactly.
It's nothing traumatic, huh?
Yeah, I love their pizza. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of my other jobs, I worked fast food, like a local mom and pop's kind of restaurant, fast food. I worked at, this bring back memories. It was what used to be, was now CVS, used to be called Revco. I worked at Revco drugstore and for a while. And then also when I was like 15, we had our own baseball card shop that I ran. That was fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
cool.
we'd run around on the weekends looking for deals, buying up baseball cards, and then I would sell them after school. I'm sure my dad lost, my parents lost like $2,000 at the time, but it was a good year that we had doing that. Like any other hobby, right? You got a little bit of money back out of it. So that was fun. That's pretty much it. When I was at college, I worked at the gym, which was always fun.
It's funny you bring up baseball cards, because the very first time I started mowing yards that first summer, every nickel I could get, I spent on baseball cards.
Yeah.
And to this day, I probably got 600-700 cards from the late 70s, early 80s. But now nobody cares about it anymore. You can't do anything with them. So I've dragged these things around for 40 years, and they're basically worthless now.
Nice.
Yeah. Wore mine in sleeves. I was a baseball card collector.
I recognize that Mike Schmidt right in the middle there. Yes,
I recognize all of them. I mean, because you're talking about, that was pretty early. I realized that my, I have an obsessive personality, so I just dove into that 100%. And I have pretty much everything memorized, every card, every player, their stats, all that stuff. It was pretty fun.
I'm a huge stats geek like you, Brian. So, and back then you didn't have all the outlets. So I would read a lot. I would get the official green books and the red books for the, the leagues. We were living in LA when I started this. So I got to go to Dodger Stadium probably 10 to 20 times a year. It's a gorgeous ballpark, even though I'm not a Dodger fan. But that reminds me, there was a game you could play. I was the only child. So my mom would buy me every couple months, first you started me off with comic books, like feeding that hobby, which I collected comic books for many, many years. And then she would buy me like a box of the tops, like I would get a whole box.
Yeah, you get the whole complete set.
Yeah. No, not the set, just wax packs, but just, at the grocery store.
So you still have fun opening the packs.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't know from complete sets in those days. But there was a game you could play, and I loved this. All it took was your cards and a dice. I wonder if any of you guys played this. You got a team roster. You had to have a decent collection, but you got the 78 starting Phillies, because that was my team. You would lay the 3 outfielders out next to each other in the outfield. Then you'd lay third base, shortstop, second base in a line, and then you put first base down where it should be. And then you put the pitcher and the catcher, and you'd roll a dice. 1, 2, 3, and 4 were the corresponding bases. So if you got a 3, he was a triple. You'd move, your card over to there. 5 or 6 were outs, and you could keep score and stuff like that. Play all 9 innings. It was a great way to pass time and actually do something with your cards. Oh, and if you rolled onto a player, that was like him catching it out too. So I would do that. I had like a notebook with I would play like 50, 60 games and call that a season. And I never do anything like that.
No, I didn't have any friends. So
no, man, but that's super
Oh, you played by yourself?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
It's like baseball card solitaire.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Got a little Yahtzee, a little solitaire. Yeah.
Love it. So, Andy, what did you spend your money on? Did you buy records and stuff, or did you buy baseball cards?
First off, it was baseball cards, but then I got into music and I started buying albums and cassettes, and I did buy 1 or 2 8-tracks, but that was what I spent most of my disposable income on.
Do you have a particular? Do you remember what you bought first, or a particular thing you were like really proud of, or you had to save up for when you were like, "Yes, I finally got this album"?
My very first, I bought Steve Miller's Greatest Hits 74 to 78, the LP. That was the very first album that I bought. So I was a huge Steve Miller fan. You really couldn't get anything punk. Was always bootleg, so it was always cassette tape. Never, it was in the old Memorex or whatever when you could get those, and those were like gold. The first thing you did was you find your buddy that had the mini boom box that had the two tape cassette tape, so you could copy it, and then you'd listen to it to make sure it was a good copy. And sometimes you got to do it 2 or 3 times, and oh yeah.
Do you remember when you had to be really quiet because if you talked, it would pick up on it? So you're like trying to catch it live. Adam, what do you remember spending your money on when you were a kid?
Well, I did a little baseball card collecting myself, but I usually went big or go home style. So I remember when I worked at the bowling alley, other than paying like my car insurance and things like that, I remember every paycheck I would come home and give my mom whatever I didn't use on like insurance and gas, and we put it in an envelope because Joe Satriani had just released his signature series guitar, and I had to have it. And so it was just like every paycheck just got stuffed in an envelope until I saved up enough money to be able to go buy that. And so, yeah, that was super cool for me, being able to do that, because back then, the guitar itself was almost $2,000 back then. So, it was a pretty big accomplishment for me. And plus it was just like, if you're a fan of a musician or anything, to have their signature, whatever it is like the pinnacle of stuff, so that was a pretty cool moment for me as far as what I would save up to buy, early on.
Nice. I think I saved a lot, most of what I made, but I don't ever remember making a big purchase like that. I remember, as I got older and got into playing guitar, that was when I was in high school. A lot of times my parents would either pay for an instrument when I wanted it, or as I got older, we would like go halves. I'd save up and pay for half, and they'd pay for the other half. Always made it a little bit easier.
Man, I in those days, like most kids, it was definitely something that I wanted to do. but I also had kids at a very early age, and that stunted a lot of the stuff that I wanted to do. But my uncle, my dad's youngest brother, is a very well-known guitar player in Indianapolis. I actually, before I found out that my kids' mom was pregnant, I had moved to Indianapolis, back to Indianapolis, to study music theory with him.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And then I had got the notification, hey, big boy, better head back because we got issues back here at home. So back to Illinois I came, and I didn't get rid of the guitar. I still have it to this day. But parenthood kind of took over that part, but wouldn't trade it, man. Wouldn't trade the guitar from childhood thing. I love kids. It's what I live for. But yeah, that kind of stunted the whole guitar playing thing. But
now, is that something that appreciates with age as far as is it worth more now if you were to sell it?
I don't think it is, man. I mean, I think it's pretty much around the same price because, just like anything, they keep releasing the newer, latest models like a damn cell phone, He keeps working with Ibanez. They'll keep putting out a different model, something with some different artwork on it, this, that, the other. And but it's just a keepsake for me, man. I've been listening to Joe Satriani since I was probably 9 years old. As a matter of fact, he after COVID, he's actually coming to Peoria near where I live for the first time since '90. So I'll go see him there. And then he's also going to Brown County, Indiana later the same month. And I just got tickets to go to that. So it'll be my 17th and 18th time seeing him live, man.
Dang.
So I'm a huge Satch fan. It's always enjoyable for me.
Awesome. Joe, do you remember any big purchases you saved up for?
Well, right around the time when I moved to the fast food job and I was earning a decent paycheck compared to the Godfather's job, I was getting into role play gaming.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we happened to role play game at a comic shop because we knew the owner and he trusted one of the guys in the group. So we could play, till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. So a lot of my stuff was like monthly comic bill. There was just a certain amount I would use to purchase on comics. Arcade, the piss away money for that. But basically I became self-sustaining I didn't have a car yet, like my own. I could use my parents, but I didn't own one. And I just kind of financed my own hobbies and things so that my parents weren't doing it anymore. And then eventually I saved up to go to a gaming convention near San Francisco in 1985. So that was pretty cool. I had enough to buy the plane fare, to stay at the hotel and, all that thing, 2 or 3 days up in San Mateo, and bumped into a few of the Boston Celtics, who are my favorite basketball team, because they happened to be staying at that same hotel. They must have had a game with Golden State. This is 85. I walk in and I see Larry Bird sitting on a couch. And this is 85. So this is 18-year-old Joe. I'm still pretty shy, but that's my idol, right? That's my guy. And I couldn't say anything to him, but as I was going up to my room, Casey Jones, their coach, was sitting on a bench between 2 elevators. So I got in the elevator and I was like, good game tonight, coach. And he smiled and nodded at me. Then the next day we went to breakfast and the Celtics had their own room and they were all there as McHale and Ainge and Parrish, and they were messing with each other, but they had a whole private room. And I was just like, I couldn't give a damn about the gaming at that point. I was like, holy cow, how did this happen? So that was a trip I'll always remember.
That's awesome.
That's funny that you say that, man, because I had a similar experience going back to baseball. Like it or not, man, I was always a Barry Bonds fan growing up, man. I just really appreciated him as a player. But my stepdad has always been a St. Louis Cardinals fan, and I was always a Giants fan. But so we would go to watch the Giants versus St. Louis when they would play in St. Louis, since it was closer.
Yeah.
And the Giant, we'd always pick the same hotel that the Giants would stay at ourselves. Yeah. And so one night after a game, I had his rookie card, and we went down and we were just standing in the foyer area and stuff. And the elevator opened and my stepdad elbows me. He's like, "Is that him?" And I'm probably, I don't know, man, I'm probably 15, 16, you know, and it was, man, I just remember when he came out, like the kids and fans just surrounded him. And I just remember, and back then I was a very non-aggressive, shy kid. And I had the card in one of those Snap-on hard pack covers.
Yep.
And I just remember vividly, like without thinking at all, going up, unsnapping that sucker and shoving it in his face. Like, I'm not going to be the last kid that gets left not getting it signed, you know, like we're signing this. And so I got that signed, which was awesome. But then the next morning, it was kind of a slap in my face, because the next morning, me and my mom go downstairs to the foyer and there is nobody there. It's crickets. And here comes Bonds all by himself. And I'm like, I have my jersey on this time. So I literally walk up to him like, man, is there any way I could have you sign my jersey? And he looks at me and he goes, I'm done signing for the weekend. And just like nailed me, like, nope. Like the only one there. So it's not like if he would have signed it, 100 other people would have come running. Like it was nobody. And he straight shot me down, man. I was like, man, lost a little respect that day for the guy.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, an experience.
I'm surprised you got him to sign the first one, because he's not good with people like that. Yeah.
He's not a real big people person for sure.
Andy, you ever ran across a famous person?
What's that?
Have you ever ran across a famous person?
Nope.
Me neither.
I've met a few politicians. I've never really been in a place where I was able to run into any famous people.
I remember when I think I was in college. That was when President Clinton was in office, and he actually came to my little rural hometown.
Oh wow!
Yeah, cool. It was a big thing, because like, why are you going to go to this little? I can't remember why he came. I decided not to go shake his hand. My roommate went and shook his hand. I went fishing that day instead. Oh well, opportunity lost there.
Yeah.
What do you guys want to talk about next?
Well, I wanted to talk about this is kind of a play off of what we had addressed last week, but I see Andy has something to say. I've got something, but I'm going to hear what Andy has to say.
Go ahead.
Well, we were talking all about fragrance last time we were on here, and so it made me think, since we're kind of talking about these nostalgic topics, like sights and smells from your youth that are still with you to this day, whether good or bad. You know, anything that you can remember that struck a chord with you. You know, smell is supposed to be that great, most powerful memory smell or sense that we have. So that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You don't realize that smell actually connects to those scenes in your brain until you go back later and you smell it. And you're like, it reminds me of that. Like I went, I guess it was maybe a couple years after I graduated high school. I hadn't been back, and I went back and I actually substitute taught there for a day while I was in college. You walk down the hall and it's just like you smell it. You're like, wow, that's created a memory.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones I remember is like from when I was a kid would be like the old wood stove smell and like country ham cooking.
Okay.
It just reminds me of a lot of different scenarios that played out in my youth, but it's kind of like old country store kind of vibe. That always kind of rings a bell with me. But a lot of things else, I never really connected smell to scenes until you're able to kind of cycle back through stuff. So I'm going to give that one some more thought.
Well,
yeah, that's go ahead, Andy.
On that topic, we so I live to the west of the largest swamp. I think it's the largest swamp in the world. It's certainly the largest in the United States, the Okefenokee Swamp. And so if you are not familiar with the Deep South, about the only trees that grow are pine trees. So that's what we have for wood. And when I was a kid growing up, my grandparents had a big fireplace, and I don't know what it was, but every time I was over there, they had a fire going, and so that smell of pine burning. And then years later, I was probably in my, I don't know, late 30s, there was a big fire in the Okefenokee Swamp, and the wind blew it pretty much all over the southeast, but it blew it straight west. And at first, it was just very nostalgic. Now, after a while, it got to the point where everybody's eyes were, drying out and everybody was coughing. But that was my first tip off. Hey, wait a minute, that the smell does really stick with you like that. And then I started exploring, and really, the one thing that I would go back and tell my younger self is to go after experiences as opposed to stuff.
Mm.
I was a lot more focused on, hey, having the cool pair of jeans, having the cool pair of shoes, and instead of experiencing some of the stuff that Joe was talking about, the concerts and all that kind of stuff. Of course, he lived in Southern California. I grew up in the Midwest, about an hour south of St. Louis, which even in its heyday was never anywhere near Southern California as far as the amount of entertainment opportunities and that sort of stuff.
For sure.
But I think that was the first time it really clicked that smells do have that kind of memory. And then, as I explored that a little bit more, I started realizing, so in I want to say the mid 80s, and Joe might remember this better than me, but there was a new line of hair products. Everything was in a purple bottle. It was Australian, and that had a certain smell. And all the girls used the shampoo, the mousse, all of that stuff. And so that one really stuck with me. So that one, I think when I smell that now, I'm still thinking cute girl.
Wasn't it called Aussie because it's from Australia or something? Aussie? I think it's what it was called. Remember, I worked at CVS, the Revco, so I stocked that stuff on the shelves. Back when you wore White Rain and you had the big bangs and stuff. All right, Adam, I'm interested in hearing your take on this, Adam, because you're one of the few owners in the beard care industry that you actually, when you create a scent, most of the time you are creating a scene, or at least many times, many of the scents. So I'm interested in hearing your take on this.
Yeah, well, I don't want to let you guys down, man, but I honestly, there's only a couple things that really came to mind when thinking about this. One for me that has carried over from my actual childhood that is still relevant to me to this day is hazelnut coffee smell. My grandma, when I would go back home to Indianapolis, 4 a.m. every morning, as we're little kids, she's in there grinding coffee beans at 4 a.m., waking us kids up that just went to bed 2 hours ago, So hazelnut coffee, because to this day, it's all I drink every morning. So I drink hazelnut coffee to this day every morning. And then the other one that came to mind was Emily's dad is big into 50s cars and things. So he has a few different 55s, 57s and things that he keeps in his shop. And I was over there not too long ago and taking a look at him, and I opened the door to this one, and the smell of the 50s and 60s type muscle cars and stuff with that vinyl and that certain smell that those cars have, really took me back to when I was little, and my dad's family was always into muscle cars, the 69 Chevelles, the GTOs, and this, that, the other. So when I opened that door and I got in there and I smelled it, I was like, oh man, like this really takes me back to, my dad's side of the family's earlier cars when I was young that they still had and stuff. But those were the two things that kind of happened to me to this day, or still happen to me to this day, that I can remember vividly from being young.
One of the things, it's funny that we talk so much about baseball. Nothing smells like hot dogs cooking in a ballpark.
Oh,
You
you're correct.
out, you could have them at home, but there's something about the way they cook a hot dog and it doesn't matter which baseball park, because I've been to Candlestick, I've been to the Big A, I've been to the Jack Murphy, the old Padres Stadium, I've been to Dodger Stadium, I've been to the two Pittsburgh stadiums. It always smells the same, and you can't replicate that smell. So that's one that I've loved since my youth, because I'm a big hot dog fan. And at Dodger Stadium, you got the Dodger dog, which is like 9 feet long. I mean, it was like a 8-inch hot dog or something.
Throw it over your shoulder.
The other one, it's a weird one. My grandma was a great cook, as most grandmas are. My grandma was a great cook, and I'm a big ribs fan. If I'm going to a new restaurant and they have ribs, I'm gonna try them. All right, because I just love ribs. Now, we always go to Emerald Isle, North Carolina for our vacations. We've done a few different places, but we go all the time. And there's a strip mall that has this place that we'd never eaten at. We just had never gone there because we'd always heard the food was so-so and the wait's always really long. Well, one year we go there and I order the ribs. And my oldest daughter, who's now 23, who was probably like 10, 11 at that time, she ordered the ribs as well. Those ribs come and I smell, and I take the first bite, and it was my grandma's ribs, like down to the last morsel. And my grandma had just passed away very recently, like within a year or two of that. My oldest daughter had never met her, and that struck me so that I wound up writing a poem about it that night. Just that idea that my oldest daughter met my grandma through the ribs. That was the kind
right on.
Poem. And it just blew me away because I loved her ribs. But and she was Texan, so I don't know where her recipe came from, but there's a different style of rib in North Carolina than it is in Texas. And even though she made like pork baby back ribs, everything to the freaking letter. I swear to God, I was in my grandma's house eating her ribs, and it blew me away. It was really kind of eerie. It was almost as if she was sitting there going, "Okay, now I'm going to meet my granddaughter," and that was fun. That was a good one for me.
Whenever anybody, it's funny you mentioned ribs, because anytime anybody comes through, if you go south on I-75, you're going to run through my hometown where I live at. And there's a top 10 in the country barbecue place that's not too far off the interstate. So I always get them to meet me there, because just a mile or so off the interstate, it's got a gas station next door. It's just a good place to stop. And the ribs there are off the chain. I've never had Texas ribs. I'm hoping to go to Texas sometime this summer. But yeah, if you guys are ever going to Florida for vacation, blow up my phone. Heck yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So what I've heard about Texas barbecue ribs is like a ketchup based thing, and it's nowhere near the flavor that you get from other places, but I may be wrong. Well, yeah, I'm sure we have a lot of people comment on it. Where's the best barbecue? Man, we could do some good content on that.
A lot of places are beef too because of cattle. Everyone does pork, but Texas does a fair amount of beef too there. Yeah. Beef ribs are good. They don't touch pork ribs, but I remember having beef ribs as a kid, and I was like, because they're huge. But I just remember plowing through them on a vacation with my grandparents, and they were.
Did you feel like Fred Flintstone with the brontosaurus rib?
Yeah, like that when you're 10, 12 years old.
Well, we kind of go back and forth. There's Southern mustard style barbecue sauce, and then obviously the Carolinas have that vinegar base.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of depending on what kind of mood I'm in. I wouldn't say I have a strong preference one way or the other, but yeah, we got different styles that we embrace here for that.
Good food's good food. I can like a lot of it.
Yeah. I tend to like baby back with the glaze, but if it's a good dry rub, I'll take that as well. But I'm not about that white Alabama sauce because they do white sauce in Alabama.
That just sounds wrong.
Yeah. I can handle the vinegar. I'm not a huge vinegar fan. The Carolina ones, but I guess it's either Memphis. I'm thinking it's probably Memphis that goes towards that glazy, saucy, tomato base. That's where my heart is. I love that kind of rib.
Yeah.
Well, the Alabama sauce you're talking about is basically mayonnaise and mustard. That's basically what it is.
It's gross. On a rib.
I love mayonnaise and mustard, but putting it on ribs just sounds wrong.
Yeah.
Copy that, Brian.
Like I said, that's too. There are people that I know that got into fist fights over who had the best barbecue. So I pretty much love them all, because at the end it's all down there at the bottom. So as long as they did the meat right, whatever sauce is on it, I can live with that.
Yeah, we are carnivores, aren't we?
So going back to what would the differences? What if you look back at where you were at the age of, say, 13, 14, 15, and where you are now, what would you say the biggest surprise for you is about yourself, as far as how you've changed, your values, priorities, whatever, belief systems?
Oh boy!
Obviously, we all know that rock is not dead, but it is damn sure on life support.
Yeah. Well, Andy, you and I got to stop that, then, buddy. We can't lose rock. We can't lose rock. There's a few things that when that goes, then you might as well just put me down with it, and that's one of them.
Well, you never lose the recordings, so at least it'll be there. We can always just live in the past. Andy, you brought it. That's a deep question you ask. I'll just throw out something that my wife and I talk about sometimes, and it's like when you're young, you think, oh, as you get older, you get wiser, and you don't care about stuff anymore, and all of that. But sometimes the more you see life and you experience things, it's like sometimes it's just not easy. There's no magic age where you care less about something, or maybe there is in a way. You stop caring about a certain thing, but then you care more about this other. I don't know. Life doesn't get easier as you get older, as I thought that it might. That's one for me anyway.
Yeah.
It's not for sissies, that's for sure. It is not for sissies.
I guess one of my biggest, just off the cuff, thinking about it right now, Andy, is I was always a 2-kid guy as a teenager. I thought when I got married, I was going to have 2 kids, and then that was going to be that. And here I wound up having 5. I don't regret any of those decisions. I regret my wife coming to work and telling me the 4th kid was twins on my lunch break, and me having to teach the rest of the day with that information. I regret that. But aside from that, I love all 5 of my kids. Ari with Downs has opened me up to a whole new world. And as a teacher too, you got that teacher parent, living in one body. I could have never teaching, by the way, also, because I always give this to my students. I don't have a high school degree because of any number of reasons, but I tested out. I was too young for the GED. So at 17, you could take what was called the California equivalency exam. It was basically the GED for non-18-year-olds. So I'm a high school teacher without a high school degree. So that's always a fun one too. So becoming a teacher and having 5 kids, both of those, my teen self would have been like, whoa.
Yeah, well, those are good ones, though, man. Those are certainly good ones. I would say for me, it's very just something that jumps out right away is my interest in learning in general. When I was a teenager, or growing still to this day, actually, I know it's controversial, but I don't care. Flat out had ADD bad. I could sit in school and I could look at the teacher, take everything in, but it wouldn't register. I would have to go home, reread the chapters, and I had a reading comprehension problem. So it would take me reading the same page 3 times before it would sink in. So my homework for the night would take me 3 or 4 hours versus the normal kid running through it in an hour and being done with it. So it really made me despise school and learning because it was so very hard for me. I was a DC student if I was lucky, and that's with trying. Studying was always really hard for me because I could just not soak it in for the life of me. And as I've gotten older and I can do things at my own pace, I value learning new things so much. It's probably one of the most important things to me. I become interested in a subject or a thing, and I can just immerse myself 120% into it and become very astute in that subject. But I think it comes from me being able to more or less do it at my own pace and go about it how I want versus having a curriculum, so to speak, or listening to somebody trying to teach me. But yeah, valuing learning as I've gotten as an adult, because at a teenager, I would have been like, I don't care if I learn crap. I'm just going to go through life and do it through experiences because I can't go to school. I suck at trying. So that would be a big one for me, is just as an adult, how much I value learning new things versus what I would have assumed being 15.
Awesome. Andy, I'll let you jump in and say, but I thought of another one. 15-year-old me would have never thought I would read a book for fun. Because it just, the books that I read in school that they made you read, that, I got no enjoyment out of it. But it didn't take me long. You start reading, I think probably the first thing I remember reading that I enjoyed was a John Grisham book, and it was like, oh man, this is entertaining. I didn't really realize you could read for entertainment and really enjoy that. So that would be one that my 15-year-old self wouldn't quite understand.
I don't think this is going to shock anyone present when I say this, but as soon as I was able to ride my bicycle down to the library, and in fact, they started a summer book reading club, I pretty much was done halfway through the summer with the required that you had to read in order to get the free book and the little pizza thing. And so I just kept reading. So I was, and to this day, if there were more hours in the day, I'd read more. I enjoy reading. So I don't think that surprises anybody that has ever talked to me, but, and it's a general interest kind of thing.
Yeah.
For me, I think the biggest change is kind of a dichotomy because, this is Andy, so it's not going to be simple, but as I've gotten older, I stopped worrying about so much what other people think is cool as opposed to what I think is cool. But at the same time, I've become a lot less selfish and a lot more concerned about what other people need and where they're coming from and what they have going on. Some of that's probably the line of work that I'm in.
I was just going to ask you that.
Which, to be honest, I never would have saw myself doing that. I saw myself being an engineer. I actually applied to get into some Ivy League schools in engineering, and that didn't work out. So kind of bumbled around. But yeah, I've kind of come back to I like interacting with people. And no, I don't believe anything that anybody tells me. I think about it and I weigh on it and let them show me who they are. But for somebody that was 15 that was desperately trying to figure out what the magic code was of what's cool, now it's what do I think is cool? Is having my beard a certain length cool to a certain crowd? Could care less. Is a certain kind of outfit or a certain car or vehicle or cologne or whatever cool? Could care less. Do I like it?
That's an important revelation whenever it hits. It always hits at people at different ages. Some people are lucky enough to get it young, and that's huge. Having 3 girls, Ari doesn't really count as much, but having my oldest and my youngest, that's a big thing I've tried to instill in them because the media and everything is kind of geared in many ways against women to have that perfect, unattainable body type and all those other kinds of things. So I try to raise them to be sweet little princesses with a man's sensibility on things. Like, you don't give a what about what anyone else thinks. You just worry about you and what you like and what you want to do, and you're not hurting people. And it's tough, because they're both bright girls, but even my 23-year-old still struggles with it. And I'm just like, when's it going to click for you, kid? You're an adult now. When's it going to click? So hopefully soon.
And for some people, it never really clicks like that. I mean, it's interesting. My dad, my mom passed away in 2015. So now he's out and, in the dating world, and you got people that are retired that don't have anything else to do, is they become teenagers again. They just sit around and talk about each other all day and worry about what everybody else is doing. And that's the absolute truth. And it's like, I never would have guessed that when you have 70-year-old people acting like 17-year-olds. It's funny in a way, in a way.
Yeah.
But people are people. It doesn't matter if you're 70 or you're 17.
Yeah.
Well, and I got to let me nerd out just one moment here. Long time, the fastest growing sector of HIV positive cases was the geriatric set. So yeah, one of them come into the nursing home with an STD. Boom, they all got it. Bunch of old users. Yeah. But, if you think about it in a perverse kind of way, that kind of gives you hope too, Not that you're catching it STD, but yeah.
Yeah, let's try to stay away from those,
Anybody else have anything else they wanted to talk about? Adam, do you have any topics?
No, I mean, I think we'll cover some good stuff. We could always think of topics and take this on for 5 hours,
last time we did this, we didn't have anything on the schedule. So I was like, okay, Joe, tell us about what you've been doing lately. And this hour and a half later, him and Andy were still talking about fragrances.
Oh yeah. No doubt about it. I mean, it's one of those things, especially when I get to come on with you guys, because everybody's got, and that's one thing that has changed. I know we're not doing beard stuff, but I'm just talking about in general with my relationship with you guys related to that. And in the fact that, like when I first started, like things were so much different. And now it's like, I don't get a chance to communicate with what I consider my buddies in the community as much as I do having to, with customers and questions and things like that. So when I get to come on with you guys like this, it's awesome for me because it's like you guys are still like the group from the beginning for me, and that will always mean so much to me. I love everybody that comes on board and I get to meet and stuff, man. But when we're talking about like things that remind you of when we were young, like you guys are what reminds me of the beginning of the beard journey, the people that helped me out and had my back and did reviews and helped me with suggestions and things. So like being able to come on with you guys, I know I sound like a little kid, but it is for me. Like I certainly do enjoy hanging with you guys, man.
Yeah, and you can come on and you can come on as a friend, right? Instead of representing your business and talking beard stuff the whole time.
Yeah, because that, I mean, I don't care. I've said it before. That gets old. You have to have something else. You have to have something else. And I don't care if this is a good chance for me to plug Honyocker. I don't, like Andy said earlier, I don't care. Like that's a portion of my life. And to be honest, I've flown by the seat of my pants my entire life as far as what I do for a living. So this may take a back seat in 2 years. I don't know. Will I ever give it completely up? Probably not. It'll at least be a good side gig and a way for me to creatively express myself. But it may not be my full-time gig like it is for, and I'll wake up one morning and make that decision. But so it's just nice to be able to come on and hang out and talk about other stuff because we all have way more other stuff going on in our lives that is way more interesting than hair on our face, So it's cool for me to be able to come on and talk about other things. So,
well, we're always glad to have you on here.
Yeah,
and we've enjoyed this conversation, guys. Let's end it here. And I know we're going to get Adam back on here soon because we just enjoy talking so much. But Adam, thank you, guys.
Yeah,
I appreciate
guys, thank you.
And be looking for us in another episode, maybe in a few weeks. All right, see you guys.
Okay, guys, nice seeing you. Talk to you later.
good. Take care, Adam.